Hi there folks, welcome back to Delboy's Garage. Now today we're going to do the interim 5,000 mile service on a Harley Sportster. An extremely easy piece of work on your bike, nothing to it. It's simply an oil and filter change and check 9 things. Whittling it down, that's all there is to it. You can do it yourself, it's very simple. Now if you have a bike that's under warranty and you're concerned about this, then by all means talk to the dealer, see where it stands. They might do it for you for a price, but the price of these services is going up and up and up, and people finding it hard to meet those costs. I heard just the other day a Harley Davidson dealer in England here charging £330 for the interim 5k service on a Harley, which when you see what we do in a minute on this service, I think is obscene. It truly is. Trying for pretty good with the Scrambler, they're asking for £150 for the basic service, which is less than half the price, and I think that just proves the point that Harley are having it away at the minute with their prices on servicing. It's very much more too expensive than it ever should be. The massive service is up at £500 at some dealers now. That's the big critical fastness check, which you can again do yourself. It's just checking about 35 things plus an oil and filter change. It's very simple. There's no valves to check on a Harley Davidson, hydraulic tappets and all that, so you don't have shim clearances to do, nothing inside the engine. It's just the clutch adjustment, which I've done a video for that. That's on the system already. If you need Harley Sportster clutch adjustment, just Google it and you'll see our video on that we did a couple of years ago. That's part of the service as well, but it's just a check. It's one of the 9 checks. You check the adjustment, and I'll show you how to do it very briefly in this. But this service, the 5,000 mile service, it's the interim. It's the midway service. It's the one, if any of the servicing you can do, it's the one you can do yourself. Very simple. It's just really an oil change, and I'm going to center this video today around doing the oil change and doing it properly and thoroughly on the Sportster, with a few little bits explained, and one very important little thing you have to do in an oil change on a Sportster or a Softail that's very important for them to prevent a problem. So that's all it is for now. Stick around, stay tuned. I'm going to show you some tools and some basic things you need so you can get yourself underway. Okay, tools. You'll already have one of these. If you've got a Sportster that came from a dealer or from a caring owner, you'll have one of those. That's your handbook. And in the handbook are all the settings and specifications and the things that you need to check reasonably regularly. And that's also your service record, information on your alarm and how to play with it and so on. That really is your operator's manual. That is not a proper workshop manual. You've all got one of those, you should be given it. If you haven't got one, you can buy them, but that covers all the Sportsters. This, on the other hand, that's a workshop manual. Now you should buy one of these, I mean this. They're very expensive for what they are. They're over, I think, £65, I think Penny would pay this one. Yep. And then we got this tax-free from Jersey Harley. But these things are a lot of the Bible. Not only is in here the service schedule, that's the service schedule, coming on that pen. This is the information you need for today. This is what we're going to be using. We come across to the 5,000 mile service, and all these crosses are the things you need to adjust. Where there's a space, it means it doesn't apply to the 5,000. It applies to the 10 at the next one and the 20. But the 5,000, as you can see, you'll see lots of gaps at the 5,000 because you don't do most of the stuff. And over here are the things that you do. And if we see at the top, engine and oil filter change. And then all the rest of it, when you come down, that's replace. Now that word replace is the oil and filter. When you come on down, every time you see the word replace again, doesn't apply to the 5,000. Coming on down again, you hardly see it at all. There's replace again. Comes to the brake caliper bolts and bushes, replace them. But look, you don't replace them to 25,000 miles. So at 5,000 miles, obviously that's not just at 5, that's at 5 and 15 and 25, 35, 45, it's the halfway. The servicing on a Harley is done every 10, and halfway to that 10 you do this basic service. So that's pretty much, they're all the things, and that's simply replace these 2 things and check those 9 things there. The other side of it is, these are the things here that they're suggesting. It gives you oil capacity, how much to buy, how much to tighten. Look at this one. This is your oil filter. Hand tighten the filter 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn after the gasket contact. Total instructions on how to do it. Which filter to buy, gives you part numbers if you're going to go to Harley, and so on, all the way down. Torque settings, information, things like the primary check, proper photographs, not just diagrams, information on how to do everything. This manual, you could dismantle a Harley till there weren't 2 parts bolted together and reassemble it using this manual, so it's worth the money. Buy yourself one of them, don't buy any others, don't go buying a Haynes, don't go buying a Climber. They're not good enough for a job like this. You need the Harley Davidson manual. If you're going to splash out on anything, splash out on that. But I'm not selling manuals, I'm showing you how to do a sports service. So let's crack in on the tools and the oil we need. Oil filter, I bought one of these, Penny's bike, I love these. That's the K&N filter. K&N because it's a worldwide known brand, and I think they're just about the best, certainly as far as marketing and brand are concerned. And I like this bolt thingy bob on top, which helps you to do them up and undo them using a regular socket, as opposed to the big grips. Oil. Now this is a big one. Oil on a service. Everyone has this massive debate about what oil, should it be synthetic, should it be semi-synthetic, should it be mineral, and so on. Honestly, don't overthink it. I read in here when I was just looking for something the other day, it says, I won't bother trying to find it again, it says, if in the absence of any dedicated Harley Davidson oil, use oil formulated for diesel engines. It's in the book, and honestly, you do not need high formulation synthetic race oil for a Harley Sportster. You really don't. You can put it in if you like. You can go and buy some Harley Davidson Syn 3, which is their semi-synthetic oil. You can put that in the bike if you want to. That's entirely up to you. You don't need to. It's not essential. This stuff came recommended from Busters for a Harley Sportster. It's a mineral oil, perfectly good for the Sportster. What's more important is fitting the oil properly. There's a drain issue which I'll show you. That's very important to do right. And doing it every 5,000. Obviously, worn out oil, we've covered this in the past. I'm not going to go over it today. Worn out oil is crap. It doesn't matter whether it's the best oil in the world and it costs £100 a litre. Once it's mushed and the molecular structure's gone, chuck it out. You put cheap oil in every 1,000 miles, you'll be doing your bike better. So don't overthink the oil, it's not overly important. You'll need a torque wrench. Always need a torque wrench, because doing up those fine fasteners, we're not doing up the torque wrench for anything that needs tight. It's the things that need doing up, not too tight, we're doing it for. You need a little socket end or a screwdriver to undo a Jubilee clip. Show you that one. You need a Torx bit. We're going to get the primary or derby cover off, and that you need a little Torx bit for that, Torx T30. So that's it. That's your kit list. Ain't no harder than that, is it? So before we do anything else, we're going to warm the oil up, because all those 9 checks, we're going to carry them out whilst the oil's draining. We're going to use our time wisely. Get the oil draining. That has a time span, needs about half an hour to drain out. Then while we're waiting that half an hour, we'll do the basic checks, and I'll show you how quick this service can be. First thing before we drain the oil out is we've got to loosen it up. The oil's at the moment stone cold, it's thick, it's sticking to everything. We've got to get it run around the engine, get some heat into the motor, get that oil all runny and soggy so it just flows out the bottom nicely. So let's warm the bike up and then we can drain it out. Just fire the girlie up. Enough of that noise. Okay. Right, first thing now is to drain the oil out, and I'll show you how to do it. Okay, on a Harley, on a Sportster, this is your drain hole. It's the same on Softails too. It's actually a rubber hose. If you can see that in the camera, that little rubber hose goes up to the oil tank, which lives up the top. And this plastic thing here is the bung that stops the oil coming out. So you just undo the clip. You can use a screwdriver for that. Take the clip off out the way. Pop your tablet tray in there and just pull the bung out. Now that oil brew will take a second. I'll say this once because I've done all this before. If you feel it, it's not working anymore. It's very easy to mush it between your fingers. So the molecules have gone in that oil. That is definitely well overdue for replacement, and that's going to take quite a while to replace, to drain that out rather. So we're going to wait a little while. A little bit of white on there, which is condensation. That's water mixed with the oil, which is definitely white due for replacement. Right, the next thing on the list is the air filter. If you've got a standard bike, your air filter still lives inside this casing, and all we need to do is whip it off. And this is the best way round to do it. Drain your oil, give it lots and lots of time to come out. Water in there from when we washed it just now. Okay, set that down on its face, and you scratch it. And the whole thing comes clean off. Just take those out of the way. Now, hold on to that gasket on the back. All I'm going to do with this is I'm going to brush gently brush out the worst in there. Now it doesn't say in the Harley manual anywhere, it doesn't say to replace the filter. What it does say is inspect and service as required. So it leaves you to make a judgment. You can put a new filter in it if you want to. If it's something that you want to do, you can do that. Don't go putting compressed air into it or on the inside to think you can blow the impurities out, because you can't. But that filter, as far as I'm concerned, will see another 1,000 miles or so before we have to replace it. And I've just brushed off all the muck and spider webs. Just inspect all around here, make sure there's nothing nasty leaking out. You'll get a little bit of residue here. That's from the breather coming out from the rocker covers, but that's absolutely fine. You can check in there to make sure there's no foreign bodies or anything out of the way. And you just pop the filter back on. Make sure the gasket stays in place. Do them up reasonably loosely so it's still slightly slack. Seat it firmly home and then just nip them up. Now there will be a torque setting for these, but don't overdo it. It's not necessary to worry too much. If you want to go to the torque settings, you just get your Harley handbook manual that we showed you, the big manual, and on the next page there is the torque setting. It'll be something in pounds, inch pounds, or probably about 10-15 newtons, but check it if you're concerned. And all I do is nip those up. Remember, they go into a basic fine thread, so don't need any more than that. And the cover back on, and that's the air filter inspected. Dress panel on, screws back in. Inspect for leaks. So we look around the bike, check for leaks. I'm skipping bits as I go. Air cleaner, inspect, we've just done that. Tyres, check pressure, inspect the tread. Well, you can do that, can't you? It's simple. And check the pressure. Now remember, you should be doing this regularly before you ride anyway. But if you want to know, that says 32.5. That should be 32 and the back should be 36. A bit warmer today, so that's correct. I'm going to check the back as I go. Obviously, when you go down the list, if your bike is a bike that you maintain absolutely meticulously in accordance with what we say, that you should check things regularly, do your pre-ride checks, a lot of this is already done. Tyre pressures, I wouldn't have bothered with that because I know they're right. Now, wheel spokes, we don't have them, we've got cast wheels, so we can move that off. Clutch, check adjustment. Now the clutch adjustment, we should do it, so let's get crack on with that. Okay, now because on this we have to take the derby cover off, or clutch inspection cover off, and one of the bolts is behind the foot peg hanger. So just, if you've got mid-mounted pegs, just have to drop them off or drop it out the way. And there's a little trick. Use a ring spanner on the end because they are quite tight from the factory. They don't need to be that tight. They are. Just take the rear bolt out completely, withdraw it and loosen the front one, and it will come out the way enough to get access to that bolt, which is the one we want. Now we're going to take these bolt casings out here. Now just a quick one. This is a Torx T30. You put a Torx T25 the next side down, it will fit and it will touch the sides and it will feel like that's the right one. But there's movement in it and it will mince the fastener because these are notoriously easy to mince. Put the biggest fastener in, or tool into the fastener that you can. Make sure it's nice and tight and that will do the job. Now these will not be tight, but if for some reason they are, you can use an impact driver. If you mince one by accident, you can use the centre punch trick in this curve and just centre punch them out of the way. And if you really get stuck, you can drill the heads off, but don't go in too far. It turns out all pennies ones are okay. I'll push that oil pan out of the way, drop one in it. Now when you check this adjustment, I've done it in the past on a whole video, so I'm not going to go into great depth about this. We're just going to check it, check that it's correct. Okay, give me the top. Now carefully, there actually is a spring here. Just lift it back. You'll see a little spring there. Wipe off the excess, put your case down on its face so you don't scratch it. Now the clutch adjustment, just pop the light in there. That's it. Cheers, mate. Right, the clutch adjustment is ever so simple. This little, I've done this on another video, so I'm just going to cover it briefly. This little tiny adjuster, there's the adjuster there, and there's the thing that holds it. This has got two shoulders, this screw has got two shoulders, and it's also in a nut housing there. So when that goes in, the centerpiece there, this is the link between that and the outer casing, so it holds that still. The screw out, that's counterclockwise out until it seats, until it meets the end here. Imagine that's got a lid on it and it's screwed in from the other side. So you're screwing it this way outwards till it stops. Then go in a quarter of a turn. So if that's now at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock, a quarter of a turn is 12 and 6 there. So that's adjusted. It was just a little tiny bit out of adjustment, not much. And we just pop that back in where it goes. Now sometimes there is, as you can see, there's a little bit of movement there. The fit that this has is not so snug that that will adjust your adjuster outside your wishes. So there we are, one more time. Adjust it outwards, counterclockwise, as much as you can without it. Don't bite, just seat it till you feel it stop and go in a quarter of a turn. And then put that back in. And that's it, you've adjusted your clutch. It is as simple as that. We pop that back on, making sure that that spring seats in that little hole. You'll feel it go in. There it is. Put the screws back in. Right. With some adapters on the old torque wrench of doom, we've got the T30 in there. Now the torque setting for these is very important that you don't do it too much, and it's also important they don't rattle out because vibration will remove them for you. So the torque setting according to the book is 9.5 to 12 Newton meters. That's NM on your dial, and this torque wrench starts at 10. That's its minimum setting. So I'm going to put it just on 10. It'll go up to 12 and up, so that's 9.5 to 12.2. So 10 is fine. That is not by any means over tightened. And the trick is with these, put the tool in and make sure that it's dead straight, not at an angle, not down like this, because that's when these delicate fasteners can be minced. And the trick is put your hand on the back, put some pressure on it, and let the torque wrench do the work. Click, and that's it. Once it's clicked, don't push on because you're putting a higher setting on it. Each one in turn and go across. I'm going to drop that in the oil, I know I am. Each one go across the casing so that you do them up in a star pattern. Hold that again on there. One click is all they need. Don't do them again. Don't get tempted to revisit that screw and click it again. It's done. Be confident in your work. And the last one. Done. That's it. That will not come off and it will not leak. There's a little rubber seal in there. If it does leak, you'll see it here. So check that after a few days. If it's a little weep, just go around them again. And we put this back in place. And we're good to go. That's that done. Okay, the next thing is to adjust on your list, or to check the primary chain, which is the big chain that runs around inside the primary case. There's 2 bolts here. Okay, little gasket pick. Yep. Take the plastic gasket off. It's actually more of a plastic joint. Just take that off out of the way. See which way it goes. Now inside here is a primary chain. Now that chain must have an adjustment of roughly 10 mil up and down movement, and that's the slack there. That's its minimum to maximum slack. And this is where to measure it. So with the chain there, this is a cold engine, it's cooled off since we've done everything. So with the chain, with it cold, it's 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 an inch of adjustment. So at the moment that chain is laying, if I look in here at an angle, the bottom of that chain is laying at 3.5 inches. So if I lift it, it deflects up to 3 inches. So that's 1/2 an inch. And the adjustment on it should be 3/8 to 1/2 an inch, or 9.5 to 12.5 mil. So that deflection in there, that slack is correct. It could be a tiny bit tighter. So in about 1,000 miles, I'll check that again because I tend to be a little bit like that. But that's got 1/2 an inch of deflection from 3.5 here up to 3 on the chain. There's about 3.5, level with that, lift it up, there's the deflection, so that's fine. I could tighten it a tiny bit, but then it might be a little bit too tight. It's always best to have a chain marginally slack rather than over tightened. Okay, so that's that. Put the cover back on. Okay, next thing, belt tension. Now, the belt itself, get the bike off the ground, go round it, every single belt, tooth, and make sure they're in good order. I forgot to say, mark the first one. There's a little tiny white mark on the first one. And just go around them all and make sure there's no chunks missing out of them, no wires coming out of them. And you can see here, they're all in good condition. You get these little rusty marks sometimes where water's laid. It's perfectly okay. It's not a problem. And you're checking them for cuts, nicks, lumps missing. That one's fine. And once you've checked your belt, there's nothing. There's a little pin there. There's an example there. There's a little tiny... There's a little tiny bit you can see just there, but it's okay. It's not loose, and there's nothing sort of hanging off it. It's not got a big piece of rubber hanging off. It could have been a stone gone in it, but that's fine. So once you've been around your belt and checked it all, you then need to check the next thing. What they talk about now is the belt tension. If you've got a chain of sprockets on your bike, you know that tensioning your chain properly is correct so it doesn't come off. Very much the same on a rubber belt. In fact, it's more important that these belts are tensioned correctly than it is a chain of sprockets. You can have more slack than you need in them. And the deflection meaning that when you push it, the amount it moves by, in the center of the belt, pen. So we're going to take that point there and that point there as roughly the two pulley centers. So the middle is about here. Put your hand on it, come in the top. Now, there is a special gauge, as there is always, but it's an upward pressure of 10 pounds. Okay, so it's quite a lot of upward pressure. Just an upward push of 10 pounds of pressure. And that belt should deflect from that rest point upwards no more than ½ inch. 1/4 inch to ½ inch is fine. The book gives 3/8 to 1/4 inch, but I think that's a bit tight, especially when you get a hot country. That's fine, but a cold country you want a little bit more slack, and that, in my opinion, is fine. Now finally, go around the sprockets. Put your hand in here. You can't really see this, and you've got to be very careful you don't trap your fingers. Go in here, in next to the swing arm, and just run your finger sideways through every single pulley groove, and just feel for any sharp edges, because the pulleys, especially the chrome ones, are plated, and sometimes that plating can peel off, and a piece of chrome plating peel off is very sharp and it will cut the belt to pieces, and a belt's a lot of money. So when you've been around that, you can put your fingers up inside. In fact, actually, if you look up in there, can you get the camera in there, Pen? That up there you can see moving. I think you quite see it yet. In a bit more. There it is. That's the front pulley you see moving. So visually, with a torch there, go around that front pulley and look for any bits sticking out, any bits of chrome, any nasty lumps out of it, and that's that inspected. A bit of rust there. But that's probably where it's got wet and stayed in that position. Okay, there we go. The next one on the list is quite interesting. Throttle, brake and clutch controls. Check them, okay? Very simple. Throttle, check. It opens fully and it springs back. You can couple two things together. When you've got that cover off, inspecting that air cleaner, you can then do your throttle, because you can see the butterfly moving at the same time. Brake, correct, nice and free moving. Clutch, everything's moving nicely. Excellent, that's all fine. That's one of the easier ones. Next thing on the list, what do we got? We're about halfway down the big stuff. Okay, jiffy stand. Inspect and lubricate, but not on this service. We can miss that one. Fuel lines and fittings. Okay, let's have a quick look. You're only looking at them. Come have your torch a second. Now, the fuel system on this has got one of these very clever self-sealing spring petrol cocks, and if you don't want to undo that, you take this collar, lift it backwards, and it pops off with a ball valve that seals. So you don't need to undo it. You'll just make a little tiny weep. But just feel around here for any fuel. This is the other part of the fuel line. Feel it, fuel lines. That's it. That is your fuel line there into the injector, and it goes from there into the two injectors, left and right. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Feel around here. This is the base. Have a look up underneath here. This is the base plate. Connected to here is the fuel pump this side and the fuel filter this side. No, it's vice versa. Anyway, there's the pump there and the filter, and they're two big cylinders up inside the tank. And obviously this is a fuel tight joint. It's got a rubber seal. Just have a little check, make sure if there's nothing leaking, leave it alone, it's fine. I'm a firm believer, if the car ain't broke, don't fix it. If there's nothing wrong, don't go inspecting it. Just look at it. Inspection just means look, and if it's fine, good. Moving on. Fuel tank filter. Again, you don't do those till all the way down to 25,000. Next thing that we do, brake fluid. check levels and condition. Right, now we did this, if you remember, we did a little while ago, we did a brake fluid change, but all we need to do with that here is around the front, sorry pen, around the front of this one, shine a torch in there, and you can see, now, I don't know if you can,
no.
just, hang on, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but as you shine a light in there, I can see the other side of the reservoir. I can see through that fluid, and that's good enough. As long as you can physically see through it, that's fine. There's nothing leaking. All the hoses, all the lines, all the way down to the brake. Same on the rear. Now, the rear brake reservoir lives on the left-hand side, but the brake system starts with push rod, comes up underneath here. You've got a push valve there, a rubber boot round it, and you're just looking for everything. You're looking for brake fluid leaking anywhere on the whole system. So go over the whole thing, including right down to the calipers, right down all here. Come this side, there it goes. That's the reservoir, so pop off the cover like that, which is just literally a cover to keep the dirt off it, and inspect in there, make sure it's up to the right level, which it is, and it's not too shabby. We did change this when we recently changed all the fluids when we bought the bike. That's it. Put that in place. And then the lines all the way down, no leaks, none at all. Job done. Okay, so what we just did is we went round. Brake pads and discs, check. Front brake lever pin. The front brake lever pin, that's just the little pin that sits that the lever itself pivots on. Checked all that just now. Brake caliper pins, check them. So when you go over the whole brake system, check, 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 check. Done all those. Rear master cylinder, check. And the next thing we check, spark plugs. Okay, inspecting spark plugs is easy enough. 16mm long socket. Pop them out. Now that's a healthy spark plug. Just before I clean it, what you're looking for is this rich tea biscuit colour on the tip and a little bit black around here. Now that's an engine that's not running too lean, but at the same time is just not running sooty either. That's absolutely correct. And this you get naturally from water collecting around the base here on the cylinder head in the weather. So what you do, take a few minutes to clean these off. They are components like any other. Brass wire brush is the best. Clean all that off around the thread. Clean the soot off. And check the gaps at the same time. The manufacturer gives you 0.038 to 0.043 of a mil. So you just come in, ride it round till it stops. And that's literally 0.39. So they are absolutely bang in the middle of the relevant adjustment. Okay, so it doesn't hurt to torque them up. Torque setting for these is between 16 and 24 Newton meters. So I'm going to do mine at about 18 because they're quite new plugs. That's it. You really don't need to do plugs up tight. Lost count of the amount of plugs I've seen done up so tight they strip. Remember that big bolt, which effectively what a spark plug is, it goes into an aluminium casting. And aluminium castings have a habit of threading out, or you'll strip the thread if you overdo it. So things like this, doesn't hurt. Do the torque setting right. 18 Newton meters, and it says 16 to 24. So that's well within. Fine. Pop them on. Clip the leads back in place. That's that done. Right, now at this point, it's there's 4 things left. Check shock absorbers. Done that. Check exhaust. Yep, done that. Switches and operation. So this is the point. Switch everything on. Don't start the engine, there's no oil in it. And check that all the switches work. Indicators, horn, and everything's working, all the lights. So that's just a visual all-round check of everything on the bike to make sure it's all working. And that's it. Now we've just got to spin a new oil filter in place, replace the oil because that's well and truly finished draining after
Now just pop the clip back on, but just loosely, because we're going to whip it back off in a minute. I'll show you why. That's it for now.
I'm going to spot the filter over quickly because all this under here is all nice and dry and clean. Little tip, just going to bung a big old towel under there just to catch
all the oil that runs out. It works quite well. Obviously make sure it's an expendable knackered old towel. And then to get that off, you can normally get these jam jar cap type things that will go on and undo it. It pulls on the flats here, but here's a little trick for you. Delboy's Garage tip number 66. Roll up a piece of wet and dry, squash it flat. Pop it round there, remember not to scratch anything else with it. And just using that as a grip. Your hands on it. There we go. There we are. No need for fancy tools. Now you'll get a very small amount of oil out of that, as you can see here. It is full of oil, but if you whip it off quick, it won't make too much of a mess. Take the seal out. A little bit of your new oil on your finger, just round inside the track, over the seal, and it doesn't need much. Certainly don't go filling up the filter. A little bit more around the top, and that's just so that when you slide that in, it slides into place and the rubber doesn't judder and stop falsely too loose. Okay, so let's pop the filter on. Okay, now socket. Quite simply, so do it up by hand until you feel the rubber mate against the aluminium engine surface. Once that meets there, we then want 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn. So half a turn is to there, to 3/4 maximum. So I'm going to come to there. That's it, done. You really don't have to over tighten these filters. There's so many people do because they think the more you wind it up, the more it will seal. You don't. That rubber seal goes in, fills up that space that it lives in, and it will seal. If it weeps a little bit, you'll see it coming out. Just tighten it up. Simple as that. So there we go. Oil filter changed. Now time to top it up. Start off with just popping in about 1 litre of oil into the tank. So what we do, because the oil in the tank is very thick and very new, it won't have run down into this tube because we've bunged off the bottom, obviously, because we don't want the oil to all drain out. So in order to get that oil down to the bottom of this tube, pop the drain plug back in place and just hold it in your hand, take the bung out for a split second, drain off a couple of mils of oil and put the bung back in. Just out. There we are. There we go. See? Took a few seconds, but it starts draining out some of the new oil. Now I'll tell you why that's so important. Go and top it up. Okay, don't have to pop that in, that's just a tidy bit. Lift that out. We see it's a little over the top, but that was deliberate because remember there's no oil in the oil filter yet, so that'll take a little bit. So quickly before we do anything more, fire it up, run it just for 10-15 seconds, run the oil around the engine, fill the filter up. Now measure it when it's run after a second or so. And there we are, up to the top. Now all I'm going to do is keep an eye on that for the next probably week or so and make sure the level is absolutely correct. Just run that for about 1.5 minutes and that's now correct for a hot engine. If it's a little bit much, very easy, put a plastic clear tube in, suck a little bit up the tube and you take rid of it out. Shouldn't be too high because you can breach oilways and stuff if it is too high. Now I just want to mention something finally, very, very important. That thing we did just now where you drain a little bit out the tube, that's very important. The tube itself, 9 inches long, 1/4 inch thick, has a big old portion of air. Now when the engine's running, the oil comes back from the engine, it comes into a return tube at the top of the tank. That then pours down the tank and it's drained back out the bottom of the tank to go back into the engine again. So the direction of flow of the oil in the tank when the engine's running is downwards, which seems odd. Now obviously when you put your fresh, brand new, clean, cold oil into the tank, it's not going to run down that tube to the plug because the air has got to come out. Remember, laws of physics, the oil is going to sit at the top of that exit. It's not going to drain down that tube because the air bubble can't come up past it because the oil is too thick. But as soon as the bike gets hot, the oil becomes much thinner. Then the oil can go down to the plug and that bubble can come out. Now that air bubble is the danger. That air bubble is 2 cubic inches or more. It's a big air bubble, it's big as an egg, and that's going to come out of that tube and it's going to come into the oil tank. Now you might think, great, that'll just bubble up to the top and that will just be fine, it will dissipate to the top level of the tank. But it won't, because what's happening is the oil's coming in to the top of the tank, flowing downwards and out of the tank again, and that air bubble is going to get sucked with that oil flow down into the feed tube, into the engine. Then you've got that much of an air gap got sucked into your tubes. And inside the engine, you've then got a gap in the oil, which is not the end of the world, but it is when it reaches the pump. The oil pump is a rotary pump, it spins. As the oil pump spins, it spins in solid oil. So it's spinning in the oil and the hydro lock effect keeps the oil going around the engine. Once that air bubble reaches the pump, it's going to cavitate. So effectively it's going to spin, but it'll just run in an oily foam. It won't run in solid oil. And that foam means that the oil movement around the engine slows right down to a stop. Your oil light can come on and you're getting no lubrication. And that's all bad, because sometimes it's quite hard to prime that back out again. Even when you drain the engine out, you haven't drained out the pump, it stays primed. And when you put a pump into a bike and it's dry, there are methods and procedures to follow to make sure it's primed. So make sure you prime that tube. Take the bung out, you take a couple of seconds as you saw, a little bit of oil drains off, put the bung back in, then you know you've primed the exit tube. It's extremely important, otherwise that portion of air will get sucked up eventually into the engine, and that's all bad. So that was a 5k service. All done, and that is all there is to it. It's a simple list of safety checks, adjustment of the clutch, checking and if necessary adjustment of the primary chain and the cables and bits and pieces and everything else. It's as simple as that. That's it. You can do it yourself. Oh yes you can. So take it easy, ride safe. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your riding, enjoy your bike, get to know it a little bit more by doing some of your own maintenance. It's not hard. Got any problems? Drop me a comment, I'll see if I can help you out. Take it easy, ride safe folks. Thanks for watching Delboy's Garage. See you next time.